The first time I saw the movie, I think I probably watched it when it first came out. It came out like 2011.
Yep.
I probably watched it in the first year or two when it came out. I wasn't a big UFC MMA guy to begin with. I was
Okay.
more of a boxing guy, so I wasn't like in line waiting to see this movie, and I didn't know who Tom Hardy was at the time. Nick Nolte. I go, okay, I guess I'll watch a Nick Nolte movie.
So I saw the movie in theaters when it came out, and I knew about this film for a long, long time because
Oh,
I was already familiar with Tom Hardy. I knew who Joel Edgerton was. I knew who the director was too, Gavin O'Connor. And so I was already familiar with the people that were involved with the project. So when I heard about the film and what was going to be about, I am into MMA. I'm not hardcore, like I'm a hardcore fanatic, but I know I keep up with the sport for the most part. So if there's one sport that I do keep up, it's that and to some degree soccer. Everything else is just kind of like a dabble in here and there. But MMA is something that I do keep checking up on from time to time. But I like the idea that they're taking a very serious approach with MMA and incorporating a more serious tone and much more dramatic, realistic tone too. Because the first one that comes to mind that came out before this movie that I thought was kind of whack was Never Back Down. I don't know if you
back
ever saw
down.
that movie. So that was
Yes.
like the first official MMA film, and when I saw, it, I was like, "What the fuck is this shit?" So I was like, "This is so I mean, I don't mean to insult the movie, but at the time I was like, "This is so fucking stupid. Like they can do better than this shit." That's how I
They
felt.
could.
So when I
And none of those kids were believably in high school.
no that so
Not a single one of them.
So when I saw that movie, I was like, "There's got to be a better film that's going to come out that will do the sport justice." Because I wanted there to be like, there's so many great boxing movies. I wanted there to be a great MMA movie, like a
Yeah.
really, really good one and a serious one at that. So when I heard about Warrior and Tom Hardy, because I knew his track record, been a fan of his for quite some time at that point. I was excited for it. I was like, holy shit, this movie looks legit. This looks really, really good. And I knew who Gavin O'Connor was. I've loved his movies. I loved Miracle. I thought he did a great job with that movie.
Oh, he did The Miracle.
He did Miracle with Kurt Russell, where he
Yep.
the 19
Hockey.
yeah,
88
exactly.
or
No,
80 something.
1980 I think it was.
80, yeah.
Yeah,
Hockey.
so he directed that movie, and I love what he did with that film. He's like, what sold me about him doing this movie was he was like, I can't hire actors to be good hockey players, but I can get good hockey players and train them to be good actors. So when I heard that and I saw the movie Miracle, I was like, this dude knows what he's doing. So watching and anticipating this film, I was like, this is going to be a very, very good. Like I was so confident this was going to be a great movie from the moment that I heard about it. And then, once it was released, no one saw it, but I went to the theaters with my wife and my son. We saw it in theaters. I walked back home, and I swear I'm not making this shit up. I was so elated from watching them. Like you would have thought like I won the lottery. Like that's how I was so impressed with the film. Like I got emotional because you saw the movie. It's about the two brothers.
Yeah.
So for anyone who hasn't seen the film, basically the movie's about two brothers who haven't talked to each other in, I don't know, almost 20 years, something like that. It's been a long
20
time.
years. Yeah.
So, each of them are going through their struggles. What the brother that Tom Hardy plays, Tommy, comes back to visit his old man out in Pittsburgh, and he hasn't seen his father in quite some time too. And right away that he has have a bad family history. His father being an abusive father, an alcoholic, and he's reaching 1,000 days being sober by that point in the film. And then he starts to train at a local gym that he used to train at, and then beats the shit out of this one very elite MMA fighter in the middleweight division. And
Famous.
just off of that, right? So just off that fight alone, someone capturing it on camera, he became like a internet sensation. And there happens to be a tournament that's coming up called Sparta, where the top fighters around the world are going to be coming to this event, and it's a 16-man elimination, and the winner gets $5 million. Nowadays MMA fighters are earning that if you're the cream of the crop.
Yeah.
But back in those days, $5 million was like boxing money for them. So that's pretty much the film for Tommy. And then we also have
His brother,
Joel Edgerton's character. I forgot his name now. I've seen the movie many times, but I forget. His family are going through some hardships where they're going to lose the house. There's some financial decisions that he's made that did not help in the situation. So they're going to lose the house in a matter of 90 days. But it turns out that he knows a coach who's training a fighter. And as a result of him participating in a local MMA event, he ends up going on suspension with no pay. So we have the cliche story, but somehow it still worked. Then the brothers are fighting in the tournament. They fight at the very end. The one brother wins,
Of course.
who's losing the house, and then that's the end of the story. So that's the story in the nutshell. So spoiler alert, that's the story. So I think for me, this is one of the greatest sports movies I've ever seen in my life. I think it's for me easily in the top 5 for myself. I don't know how you feel about that in terms of it being a great sports film, but I think it's one of the greatest of all time, in my
I
opinion.
okay. So I will say I think that it is one of the best one of the best sports movies done. I don't think it's the best movie, but it's done in a way that everything is, for the most part, pretty believable. I'm a huge UFC fan, MMA fan. I watch everything, and I avoided watching this movie for a while. Like after I saw it, just because I've been watching it, and I was afraid it's going to be Rocky. If you are a boxing fan and you watch Rocky, you realize like, oh, this fight would have been called like rounds ago.
Right. Easily. Yeah.
Easily.
So I guess we'll get into it because that was one of
Yeah.
my negatives in the movie too. But yeah, you were saying.
Oh, I think it's a great movie, and the fact that the fighting didn't take too much precedent over the acting or the story. Like all of the fighting acting that they did was believable enough, I think, and it wasn't distracting.
So I think that the fighting in this movie, it's not the best I've ever seen. There have been some better boxing films, that weren't where the film may not have been as good, but the boxing scenes were great or
Right.
okay.
Yeah.
Excuse me. The fight scenes in this movie were good enough, in my opinion.
Just
They weren't
enough. Yeah.
fantastic, but they were good enough. And I think some people may have complained that some of the things that the fighters were doing weren't realistic. I beg to differ. So if you know your MMA history, a lot of the moves you do see that occur in those fights were inspired by real life fights that where a lot of these fighters have performed these physical
Yeah.
feats that you see in the movie. So for me, it wasn't far fetched. I thought it was realistic enough because but you don't see that often. That's why it's one of the things I think people don't believe it.
Well, if you watch Rocky, all of the fights are way fantastical. Like it is the
Rocky
form,
4.
where you just sit there and you're like, nobody boxes like that. Like it's
No.
like not even in glimpses do professional boxers box like that.
Yeah.
And I think that the way that they cut it, fast cuts, and it was just enough to where you can be familiar with the sport and be like, okay, this for the most part is passable. A couple of the throws I thought were a little like he got suplexed. Like you can't actually suplex a grown man from stand.
Well, you'd be surprised. I've seen some. I mean, I've watched enough MMA where I've seen guys who get thrown around that I was blown away that they have this physical strength that they're pulling off here. I mean, it's like the little. I mean, I said you don't see that often. So it's
Right.
You see a few guys that pull it off,
Right.
and they are like the, the one in a million, if you will. So
The
it doesn't
outliers.
right. So it doesn't really surprise me that in this movie, because you have to think about it, you have to bring the excitement to the film. So let's point out some of the guys that have done this, and we'll infiltrate it with these characters and make it happen with them. And a lot of those guys are more than capable of pulling off. There's no doubt about that. The only thing though that so we kind of got off on a tangent, but let's start off with with the characters in this movie, because that's the cream, the cream idea, the real attraction to the story for me, which are the actors. We have Tom Hardy, as we mentioned before, and his brother Joel Edgerton, who plays his older brother. So the two brothers have grown up in an abusive household, but Tommy was the favorite child because he was the gifted child. Like he had the physical attributes that was far superior than most of the other kids in the area, and was able to go very far with his physicality. But then, of course, the separation between him and his father and their mother caused a lot of that to stop. And then there's a bit of a backstory where you've come to find out that the two brothers had made a pact where they're going to be leaving together with their mother, but
because the dad was abusive,
right? But the older brother ended up staying because he fell in love with his high school girlfriend, who he ended up marrying, having children with. And his brother felt betrayed, and you can clearly see that his brother has this built up aggression towards his family. But the very few people that he doesn't have that towards is his Marine buddy, who has died in combat. Well, more or less through this situation where there was a bunch of friendly fires and they got killed. Well, his friend got killed in the process. But when you see him interact with his friend's family, he's the sweetest guy in the world. It's just like a night and day personality there. So
I thought that was so great, that scene on the beach where
Yeah.
the brothers meet for the first time in 20 years, and the older brother is like being nice and kind and happy, and Tom Hardy's character is like not happy. Who are you?
Yeah.
I'm your brother. Were you in the Corps? Because my
Yeah.
brother was
Yeah.
in the Corps. Oh. And then what killed me, because I'm an East Coast guy and
Yeah.
they're from Pittsburgh, but it just seems so natural for it to be the older brother shows him photos of his baby. He's like,
Yeah.
hey, this is your niece. It's like, I don't know them.
Yeah.
I don't know why you show me pictures of people I don't know. I
Yeah.
was like,
You
Tom
know,
Hardy is a beast.
what was was really fucked up was when remember when in the beginning of the movie his brother Tommy waits for his dad outside his home,
Yeah.
and he has a bottle
Oh
and he's
yeah.
drinking, and his dad's like, no, I stopped doing it. He's like, you don't drink no more. He's like, no. He's like, and then he's like looking at him all weird. He's I'm almost 1,000 days sober, and he's like, all right. So he comes in the house and he's judging his dad. He's making all these critical remarks about his home. He's like, you don't have a
Poking.
woman's touch in the house.
He's poking the bear. That's what he
Right.
wants. He wants a fight.
Right. So he's pretty much like trying to
Instigate.
instigate something, and he's telling his dad, you don't have a woman's touch. He's like, yeah, I can't, or something to the effect of, I can't find a woman to stay with me. He's like, I guess you can't find a woman who can take a punch, right? And I was like,
Yes.
damn, that's fucked up.
He's
But you understand the history, and you're like,
Yeah.
I get it.
Well, because the thing is, that's the opening scene. You don't know
Yeah.
anything.
Yeah.
And he's like, you want a drink? And he's like, that's not for me. He's like, did you change brands? Which
Yeah.
to me, it just seems like, anybody that's a drinker or a smoker, it's like, you don't change brands. And it was just like almost like a changing brands is more impossible than actually quitting. And it's like, wait,
Yeah.
you change brands?
Yeah.
But I think that we forget how much of a monster Nick Nolte is at acting.
He was
And
nominated for an Oscar for that part,
I
and
believe it.
he didn't win, obviously, but I wish he did win it because his performance was really good. I mean, you were just starting off with that, but yeah, he was amazing in that movie.
And if you know the context of Nick Nolte being kind of like a monster in life, just
Mhm.
generally, just seeing him buttoned up and Tom Hardy's like poking the bear, and he's just staying in the pocket, and like
Mhm.
just that fear of imminent danger
Yeah.
throughout the whole movie until the end. You go, wow, like there's a sleeping dragon, and it could come out at any minute, and Tommy's saying, hey, I want the monster, I want the boogeyman, and it never comes out until the end. Was amazing.
Yeah, and here's the thing though. So when you watch that relationship between Tommy and his father, and of course we also get a bit of that with his older brother. I keep forgetting. Well, we're gonna call him Joel because I keep forgetting his name right now. But
Joel.
Joel's character, seeing the relationship between him and his father. But the one thing that was really good about both their performances, because you can see clearly where the differences in personalities, like who's the aggressor and who's not, and who was the aggressor, who now is the aggressor. And when you see Tommy just being really, blunt and just rude with his dad, when he had that restaurant scene where he says, "Hey, I want you to train me because there's a fight coming up, and if there's anything that you've done very well in, it's training. So that much I got to give you. So I want you to train me for this upcoming fight." And then he's like, "Well, does that mean we're coming back to our old way?" He's like, "No, no, no, no. Don't get it twisted, man. Because I don't care about your, what you're going through. Just all we're gonna do is talk about training. Don't talk about fish stories with me. You take that to VFW, whatever." And he's like, "Because if you do that, I'm gonna walk away." And then boom, in like an instant, Nick Nolte comes out, and this is where I saw like this guy's a fucking good actor.
Yep.
And he's like, all right, well, don't come and threaten to walk away every 5 minutes because remember, you came to me. So if you come to me, you do as I say when I say it, in a nutshell. So you're gonna come and stay with me. I'm gonna watch your diet, same routine we've come through before. And as far as I'm concerned, since we're in training mode right now, take all those pills you've had in your pocket, and I could hear them the moment you walk through the door. Give it to me right now. He's like resisting, but then he gives in. But then you see him kind of
And
turn into a child at
yep,
that point.
that was such an amazing scene that's underrated.
Yes.
It's the abused kid coming to slay the boogeyman, and the boogeyman somehow keeps him in line. And it's like this chess, like tit for tat, move.
Yeah. I think that's like a psychology thing too, because that was an interesting thing for me too. Because if you look at it, this is a guy who's have this built up aggression. He's been able to keep it pent up, and then at any moment's time, he's able to just drop it at an instant. But
Yeah.
when it came to the training aspect of it, it almost seems as though he never recovered from that. You see where I'm
Yeah.
getting at? Because it seems you can tell
Yep.
the abuse was so bad that the training is where his dad had the most control.
Hmm.
And Tommy was just someone that went along with it because he knew that what his dad was capable of doing. So I think a lot of it had there was a lot of fear instilled to him, but with the gifts that he was been given to be able to um, do what he was doing in the sport of wrestling, you can clearly see that this guy was still a child, and he's masking those insecurities with his anger, and his physicality certainly has helped in conveying that strength. But deep down inside, he was just a kid, and his
Yep.
father, turned him around in a heartbeat with that
Every
speech.
scene where it's those two talking, it's chess, it's moving, like who's trying to gain control. There's that, right?
Yeah,
So Tommy keeps on threatening to leave, and then he goes, well, if you want to do it, give me your pills. And then he gives him 2 bottles of pills. They're like, no, 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 no.
no, give me 3.
I
Yeah,
heard it. Give me the third one. And then the next scene where dad comes in, he's soft in the morning, he's soft, and he's like, hey, remember the time, da, 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 da. And he's like, hey, keep all those stories, I don't want it. And he's like, I'll pour my own coffee. And then you see Nick Nolte kind of think about it and goes, at 5 in the morning, I'm dumping it. Like,
oh
because
yeah, yeah,
they're both trying to get just that little bit of control.
yeah. And
It
he's
was
like, I
fascinating.
hurt my knees coming up these stairs. It's
Yes.
like,
Yep.
that
If you're
shit
not,
cracked me up because here, so we've got that aspect of the relationship, but then we also got Joel Edgerton's character, who is, he's the oldest of the brothers, but he was the weakling. He was
yep,
the second favorite, if you will, that's for lack of a better term, who was
last
trying
favorite.
to.
He's the
Right. Well,
last
yeah.
favorite.
So he's trying to live up to his father's expectation, but his father completely dismissed him the entire time. He's like, hey, I try to get your attention. I wanted to be trained by you, but you always ignore me. There's that speech that he has when his dad showed up at his home out of the blue. And then you can see that that he told him, hey, no more direct communication. You got to send me mail. That's the only way you're gonna communicate with me. So because you learned there's a bit of history about the last time they actually had been in the same room, something had escalated and became really, really bad. So that's, he set the standard that we're not doing this anymore. So you could see that relationship had been torn. Even after him staying in the area, he still tried to try to have a relationship with his father, but his father still dismissed him. And now it's got to the point where it's almost unrepairable. So you see that relationship between the two of them, but it almost seems as if though his brother, Joel Edgerton's character, is the more understanding, the more forgiving. Tommy's like, I don't give a shit. I need you for something, so that's what I'm gonna use you for that. After I'm done with that, I don't need you anymore. And he's pretty much letting him know that's
Yeah.
gonna be the extent of their relationship. So now we come to the part of the two brothers who actually meet with one another. We've kind of touched upon that before. And you can clearly see that, one brother's trying to make amends, whereas the other brother wants none of that. And it's not until the very end, which we come to see where the hatred starts to come out. And that's where you see Tommy's strength. Like, he was bulldozing through guys, from the very beginning of this tournament. But when he gets to his brother, he's bulldozing through him, but he's taking his time beating the shit out of his brother. Like, he wants his brother to feel the pain. And that's why I think where the fight scenes work the best, in my opinion. I don't know if you
Yeah.
felt that same way too.
Well, I think that is the picture of him being, what was he, a Marine? He was
Mm-hmm.
he was in the military, but
Yeah.
like them painting the picture of like no man left behind, and you don't turn your back on a brother and all that, where it's the complete contrast to him and his brother, where he felt like his brother did exactly that. He chose his dad and not his mom and his brother. He chose his dad and his girl.
Yeah.
I thought that they painted that so well.
Yeah.
And that is exactly what the whole thing is. Like, I'm never going to turn my back on my brothers, and all you do is turn your back. And they present it that way.
Yeah.
I think with that fighting scene between the two, I think it was good. But then, we watch fighting enough to know that, oh, you broke your arm, the doctor's waving that off.
Yeah, yeah. I remember when I saw that in theaters, I was like, this fight would have ended the moment his shoulder had been broken.
Yes.
And the fact that they allowed him to continue with no cornerman, which I don't think the commission would allow these days
At all.
And then him being busted up like that. But I will admit though, it definitely did help with the emotional aspect, the emotional impact that it carried through with that. So in that regard, I appreciated them taking that direction with the story.
I can't. I
But
can't. I can't get the.
I know where you're coming from. But I actually liked it because I call me sentimental, but every time I watch that particular fight, especially when it gets to the very, very end of the fight, I that's where you see the two brothers kind of make amends after beating the shit out of each other.
Right.
And that's what the violence separated them, and then the violence brought them back together, that's how I look at it.
I can believe in movies of far off lands, dragons, foreign creatures. But when you break your arm inside the octagon and it doesn't get waved off, I can't believe it. I have a hard time.
I don't fault that statement by any means. Yeah, I agree with you, but I'm the type of guy that is able to overlook some flaws if the film has enough strength to
Yeah,
carry the story.
I feel like there could have been a different way about it.
Yeah,
I feel like from a story point telling, there could have been a more realistic and just as emotional aspect to it. How, I don't know, because that's not my job, but I feel like, as a fan, you can call those things right off the bat. You go, oh, that's rough.
Well, another thing too is that the doctors never actually, from what I remember, never actually went into the ring, if you will, during the rounds, because that's a very common thing. The doctors have to be there with the coroner, make sure that the eyes are are not swelling, or the cuts are being handled properly. Any sort of injuries, let me see your eyes. Are you focused? Whatever. So they have all these protocols they have to follow when it comes to the fighter's safety in between the rounds. And here, it was like non-existent, pretty much,
Right.
except at the very, very end when the brothers do finish the fight, when Tommy taps out, and even then the commission's trying to get into the ring, and his older brother's like, no, stay away, let me take care of him. That would never happen. They would have said, get off of him, or you're going to get fined, and you will probably go to jail. I mean, there's a serious consequences in telling the commission to fuck off, because they, as far as I'm concerned, they are God when they are
in that ring.
Yeah. So
from bell to bell. And I will say that I did have to take some time to think about, digest what the actual UFC landscape was circa, the movie came out 2011, so circa 2010. I went back and watched some of the older events and George St. Pierre fights. And I feel like the movie was written 5-6 years before that. Those tournaments, those fighting 3 times in a night, that hadn't happened in 10 years from then.
Well, it did happen before. I think it happened with Pride in Japan. I remember Pride having those events, but see, even with
you can't sanction that. You have to be on an Indian reservation to have those fights.
Right. But in Japan they did that. I believe it's been a long time since I kept up with this. My memory's a little vague, but I do remember them having tournaments. But I think it was either the same night, or it was just one event, then it led into the next event, then the next event, or something like that. I know Bellator recently had tried doing that, or was it Bellator, one other fighting promotion? I can't recall which one. But
they have tournaments, but it's not fighting on the same night.
But the fighters fight the same night. They did that fairly recently with one particular promotion. I think it might have been Bellator. I could be wrong. But they did that, and it was King Mawal. I don't know if you know who he is, but he was fighting.
King Mo, yeah.
Yeah, so he was fighting, and he won the first fight and was on the way to fight the second fight, I believe. And I think he got injured prior to the fight or during the fight, and he couldn't continue on with the next fight. Like he had won the fights that he was participating in, but was badly injured to the point where he couldn't continue on. So right there, that whole tournament in one night scenario is not it doesn't really work, because the consequences are too
not worth it.
It's not worth. You're gonna cause more damage in the long term. And
I think that happened. I think that happened in UFC 3 or 4, where they've got replacement guys, so you can't fight, you get injured, you win, but you get injured and you can't fight the next fight. Then they have an alternate, and basically the alternate fought one fight, the last fight, and beat the guy that had fought 3 times that night.
Yeah.
So,
but in UFC 1, because the commission back then wasn't nowhere near as stringent as it is now when it comes to the fights, because back then they didn't have any rounds. And it was kind of unsanctioned in a lot of ways too. They had to do it in Colorado in the first UFC event. Then they did it in many parts of the South,
Alabama.
Right. And so it was a it was kind of like the old West, if you will, at the time with these
Yeah,
events.
they were Indian reservations.
Yeah, they were quite literally, and so I mean, obviously the sport has evolved ever since Dana White and the Fertitta brothers had purchased the UFC and made it to what it is now. But but it took a long time for them to get all those commissions to come in to agree to help allow the fights to happen in the respective states. Now they're legal, I think, in all 50 states, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know about Alaska, but I'm assuming that it is.
Yeah.
But it's something that took a long time for them to get to that point, because people perceived it, to be a very dangerous and
It's human cockfighting. You're like,
yeah.
yeah, but what's boxing, bro?
Box is the same way too. And now they have a bare knuckle fighting championship,
Yeah, it's so
where
gnarly.
it's like, it's clearly the sports have evolved, to the point where people are now actually fighting bare knuckle, which it wouldn't have been, legalized many years ago. Now it has, as long as you have the proper padding. I'm
Yeah.
assuming that's the commission rules, I believe.
I was all about bare knuckle boxing. I was all for it. And then I saw it and it was like everyone just getting cut. You're getting cut. And it's like, this
Yeah.
is not sustainable. With boxing, sure, CTE, head trauma, and that's what you avoid in bare knuckle, less. But just seeing all these people get cut up in the face, like something horrific, I was like, I'm out. I can't do it. So
pretty brutal, but it's fun though.
Yeah, I don't want to harp on a lot of the technical spots of the thing of the movie, but I will say I thought it was comical that they just let this contender fight MMA fighter spar with this unknown guy in the gym. Like, I find that comical at best.
Yeah, I see where you're going with it, and I can agree with you to a point. Here's the thing. So let's kind of point out some of the negatives with the movie, because there's a lot of things about this film that I felt was way too cheesy for my taste. And
let's go with cheesy. Let's go with over the top cheese.
Over the top cheese. So I agree with you. The that whole training aspect where the guy, the top ranked middleweight at that particular gym, is beating the shit out of everybody, and they need sparring partners. And then he's offering his services. Whereas before, he seems like such an isolated guy that, all of a sudden he's going to offer his services now. I mean, like, maybe that's just his competitive spirit, if you will, that's doing that, or that's where he's, compelled to do that sort of stuff. Maybe he did want to help out. Who knows? But
I think he just wanted to whoop ass just to prove the fact that he's the baddest MFer on the planet.
I think that what I also noticed too, I could be wrong. A part of me thinks maybe he just hates bullies, right? But then again, he's kind of a bully himself too, I would imagine, to a point. But he's only doing to the people that have hurt him. That's what I've noticed. But there's a part of me that looks at that scene. I'm like, and especially when the guy was like, "Yeah, you're Rock. Oh, yeah, you're Mick. Oh,
you're Rocky."
Yeah, he's like making the Rocky joke, and then he comes back, and then this is the part where for me, I was like, okay, I can go with this here, because he makes just a general comment. Hey, listen. All I want to do is help and keep your boy warmed up. That's all. If you don't want me to come in, cool. But I want to help out. Something to that effect. And he's like, did he sign a waiver? Yeah. Okay, good enough. That was it.
I think it was like the money. I think it was the money, because he was like, tell him I'll pay him $200 if he can get in the gym. And he's
you're
like,
right. Yeah,
I think it was like the money, and he's also like, what else am I doing? Plus, I could probably beat this guy. All of the things, because you got to remember he was wrestling as a kid and he's beating everybody, so he knows he can handle himself. I think it was just more so of you're sparring and nobody has headgear on. Like, nobody has headgear on, and only one of you guys has shin pads on. Okay, that's a little far. That I had a hard time. I thought it was comical.
I do agree with you. It is, but the strengths of the performance that Tom Hardy delivers, alongside with everybody else, with the exception of maybe the MMA fighter who was calling him out.
Yeah.
They were so good that, like I said, I was able to overlook those flaws because the strengths are in the performances.
Because I know too much. That's the problem. I just know. I know too.
Yeah, I know. I agree with you. But here's another thing too. So let's talk about some of the other cheesy aspects of the film. We've got Joel Edgerton's character.
Before you go, I just want to say I generally dislike his face. I dislike looking at Joel's face. Sure, he's a great guy, but his face bothers me. Continue.
That's probably why his dad did not want to train him.
Yeah, I don't like him either.
You have a despicable face. I can't stand it. Stand over there.
Your face. Stop looking at me.
Yeah, come over here, Tommy. You look cute. Come on. No.
I'd rather, yeah. If you had to look at Tom Hardy or Joel, I mean, come on. I'm looking at Tom.
Well, when you look at Tom Hardy, though, you can there's a clear difference in as far as the physicality. I mean, Joel Edgerton obviously looks like he's in great shape. You can see that, and you can tell, and he put on muscle. But when you look at Tom Hardy, like, oh, I can see why your dad didn't want to train you. Look at this guy. This guy looks like he's ready for war.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, you're still trying to unpack your bag to get started. So it's like there's a clear distinction between the two of them, and it's
well.
obvious. It shows. But so what I was getting at, so the story of Joel Edgerton's character, we have a story that we've all seen before. They've got a house. He's a full-time teacher. His wife is a stripper, which I was surprised when I first saw the movie, because she was gonna go at some at her job in the evening, and I think she's a stripper.
I thought she was a waitress. Is she a stripper?
I thought she was a stripper. I've seen the movie so many times. I still don't know whether or not she's a stripper. I believe she is. That's what I choose to believe. So I guess maybe it says a lot about me, but
that's what it is now.
Yeah. Nothing wrong with being a stripper. I'm just saying, though, it's just that's what I thought she was. Maybe she is a waitress. Who knows? But what I'm trying to get at is that we get that story of that family, and they're on the verge of losing the house, and because of some bad decisions that were made, some bad financial decisions that were being made, and now they are having to find way to get X amount of money for them to save the house and not have to go move somewhere else, so abruptly. And this tournament happened to be there at the right time, and his friend who he used to train with is able to take him in to train with him, but not to train him for a fight. It's just more or less how I'll help you alternate while I'm training my main guy for this upcoming tournament. You can help in that regard, but when I'm available, I'll train you. That's going to be the extent of my involvement with you. Fair enough. And then if obviously that fighter got injured, and he begged him, please, let me talk to you guys. Let me in the tournament. He's like, I'm asking for a big risk, because if you lose, it's going to look bad on me. It's not going to, I'm not going to lose.
Which seems to be legit, which seems to be like a legit thing.
Right. So for something like that to allow a fighter who really doesn't have much, a cloud over him, like say, all these other elite fighters, for them to get an opportunity to walk into a tournament seems rather ridiculous. He's like, hey, I made a lot of calls for you, but I made it happen. You're going to be a part of the tournament. And I'm like, that's all it took. I mean, do you know how many guys could easily have gone into the UFC just on that alone? And quite frankly, that has happened because there has a notoriety around the people that are looking to join into the fight. We have former boxers who have no MMA background who have joined. Who was the recent one? Not the recent one. There's a guy that fought Randy Couture. His name, what's his name? He was a former boxer. Jesus, I'm gonna have the name on the card on the screen there. But by the time
recently,
no, this is like over 10 years ago.
Oh, Toney.
James Toney. That's it.
Yeah,
James Toney, no MMA background at all, and he was able to come in and do a fight with the UFC. But he has a cloud over him that that gave him the ability to kind of walk into that. But to have some guy who has never fought in an MMA professional tournament beat the shit out of one guy convincingly, and then have the ability to walk in with someone else, say, hey, I did you some favors. Now you're in the tournament. It almost seems a little bit outlandish to me that would actually happen, because it would never will happen in real life.
Right. And also it's like you're doing smokers literally like 2 weeks or a week before the fight. Like that wasn't believable, where he was like, oh, well, I'm going to go fight in this parking lot for $200. Like, you have a tournament to prepare for. Yeah, but I'm just going to fight this guy at a strip club.
Well, he wasn't a part of the tournament yet. That's the thing. His brother wasn't part of the tournament. He was actually just doing his own thing on the side, trying to gain the experience to eventually get into some promotion, maybe the UFC, because which he did fight before. Well, from what I remember in the conversation they had with the principal. But
well, he fought at some point, and that's kind of where the money decision came, because he got jacked up, and he had to go to the hospital, and that's where the money went. And also, I think that was like the day that his dad was a drunk and was supposed to be there cage side and didn't, because he was drunk, and that's when they called it off. I believe that's how that worked.
Yeah, I think I remember the story correctly too. But then we also have the issue with that was kind of touched upon earlier in the movie, where they were in financial debt too, because his daughter had a major heart condition that also contributed to their debt. But these guys, he was always trying to provide for his family. So you have that nice aspect of the character, that you have showing his good side, and seeing that he's always been the underdog, which I never really felt like he was. I always felt like it was more of a, I didn't have that impact like, say, like a Rocky character.
Yeah.
I didn't feel that underdog story with him at all. It's something about that didn't really I didn't connect with. Not to say that he wasn't any good, he was, but it just didn't have that impact on me. But I will say though that when his best scenes when it came to really seeing the flaws of the character were with his father and his brothers and
Hmm.
his brother Tommy. Those are the moments where you really get to see, I think, his best performances in the film.
Yeah.
But everything else outside of the cheesy aspect, where we're going to lose the house, we need the money, and then the wife doesn't want to be supportive because she's scared for her husband. I don't want my kids to growing up with a father who gets beat up for a living. I'm like, you really just said that, but
But
when Rocky,
he was literally doing it like right before the movie started. He was literally getting beat up for money.
but she didn't really know that. She thought he had stopped. So she thought that he was going to work at some
Yeah. I
bar or
just
some strip club. But like it's those little uh, those little things that would help move the story and help me connect with the characters and with the story to a degree didn't really do it for me. I mean, Rocky 4, where Adrian was terrified that Rocky was going to
yeah.
lose this fight because there was a massive Russian who killed his friend,
Not even the same weight class.
not even the same weight class. And he's like, I'm gonna fight this guy because I gotta fight for my friend Zana. She's like, what? Why?
Yeah.
You don't have to fight him. He's not challenging to a fight. I just gotta do it. I feel like I have to do this. And I can't do it here in the States, so I have to go to Russia. Are you fucking serious? Like, you're gonna die. He's gonna kill you. So that I felt like, yeah, she's got a
Yeah.
point. She's
Right.
got a point, dude. Meanwhile, Joe Edgerton is fighting some dude off in the parking lot, and he's winning his fights.
Yeah.
Whether
But
he's struggling, but it didn't have that impact for me to like, oh, I see where you're coming from, sweetheart. You got a really good point.
yeah. Yeah. And the thing is, like, people don't understand like how slow wounds, like, you get cut in a fight, like you can't fight for weeks,
Mm-hmm.
weeks. Like, you're gonna take a smoker and be like, hey, I know I just got into a fight and I seem to be fine. I have this cut that seems to be going away, but yeah, let me just jump into a $5 million tournament. Yeah.
Yeah, and then there's another thing too where you see that training montage, which I thought was kind of unique. It wasn't my favorite, but it was unique how they were kind of just putting all these different images of the two brothers training and all the other fighters that were training along the way too. He's going through these, you said, smoker fights. He's getting his ass whooped and he's taking a beating, even though he's winning his fights. But yet he's able to outtrain the star of the gym that he's training at by running faster than him, running uphill. And I was like, dude, I'm no athlete, but I know for a fact that knee is going to be fucked up, and there's no way he's going to be able to pull that off. After fighting the week before where he took a beating, and be stick out in that regard. So yeah, there's a lot of unbelievability in this movie when it comes to that. But again, the strengths are really in the performances, and that's
Yeah.
where it really sells it for me.
I mean, they do well within the confines of like the story, because anybody in their right mind would be like, hey, do you want to sell your house and try to recoup what you can, or do you want to get kicked in the face with maybe still having to lose your house? Like, how do I not get kicked in the face? Let's go
Yeah.
with that route.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think for me, I said before in the beginning, I still think this is one of the best sports movie I have come across. I really do think it's one of the best ones out there. I will say that it's one of the best MMA movies because it's really the only good
Only-
MMA film that I've come across that I've seen that really does stick out. There's a lot that I do connect with the story because a lot of it for me has to do with the two brothers. I appreciate their story. I think Tom Hardy is fantastic in the film. When you see a lot of vulnerability in moments where it really I felt the impact. And then of course you see his older brother, feeling bad for his brother after beating the shit out of him too,
Yep.
and hurting him. So it definitely does stick with me when I see how these two brothers are going at it with one another. One doesn't want to continue fighting where the other one did, and then they come to a point where they uh, finally make amends with one another by beating the shit out of each other. So it's a very messy story. What I mean by that is that it's a messy story for these two characters of going through this hardship and turmoils, emotional turmoil, I think. But they've come to make amends, and you're left to believe that they're going to be reacquainted with each other, reconnect with one another, and it's going to be a happy ending to some degree. So that's how I kind of perceive the story for me, from my
Yeah.
perspective.
I will say it's great because I mean the acting. You got Tom Hardy playing opposite Nick Nolte, and Joel just has to hold on. That's all he has to do. He just has to show up, and he knocks it out of the park. But just the tit for tat between the two guys was worth everything. They could have just not shown any of the fighting and just show us the recap, and I would have believed it.
Yeah.
Just because the acting was so on point.
Yeah.
Um,
But what do you think of the overall, the overall story in itself with the brothers, the father, the wife, the kid? Well, the kids were barely in the movie, but just the overall package itself. I mean, did you like it
I did.
enough for you to want to go back and revisit it? Yeah, if you were just to want to watch a film on your own free time, like, is that something you would feel you would be compelled to do?
Yeah, I definitely think it's worth the watch for sure. It's worth the watch. It's worth the revisit. And me, I know too much to a fault to allows me to not be able to enjoy movies all the way
Yeah.
through. But I think the storytelling aspect of it, the all of the fighting aside, it's a fighting movie. What do you expect? I will say that it's definitely worth the watch. It's definitely worth the price of admission.
I agree too. I think I would definitely go and say, because I think I might use my rating system here. So if I were to recommend the movie, I would definitely go with a. I would say this is definitely a raise the glass for me. So it's, I don't think it's a perfect film by any means. There's a lot of problems that I do have with this movie, but I do think it's a very, very good film. It's really worth your time. And whether if you're an MMA fan or not, I don't think that really is going to make any difference for you, because there's a lot of people who watch Rocky films and aren't boxing fans. So
Right.
I still think there's something you can connect with the story. The MMA stuff is just like, it's just a backdrop for me. That's just
Right.
an added element
That's
to tell the story. So
that's a great point. And I think that the yeah, it's just the vehicle in which that the characters arrived at the scene too.
yeah,
Um, I will say that I was very happy to see a couple actual UFC fighters. Nate
yeah.
Marquardt was in there. Anthony Rumble Johnson was in
Mhm.
there. Uh, Kurt Angle from the WWE had never looked so scary.
Yeah. And his
He was
character is
fighting.
loosely based off of Fedor Emelianenko, who was
Yeah,
the cream of the crop at the time, the biggest,
right.
most powerful heavy. Well, not the biggest, but the one of the most uh
Legendary. He was the boogeyman.
scariest. He was the what's the Russian term for boogeyman?
We called him Baba Yaga.
So I will say that what I did appreciate was Bryan Callan doing his best Joe Rogan impersonation, ringside commentary. But I did really appreciate the fact that they couldn't believe the storyline in which that the Joel's character was there. Like he's like, yeah, I've seen a couple of his fights and they were forgettable. I can't believe he's here. Like he doesn't belong there. I think that was really needed because I'm here being like, the whole time. I'm like, this doesn't even make sense. This doesn't make
Yeah.
sense. And then you hear them say that, you go, okay, okay.
The
I
movie
appreciate you
acknowledged it,
guys.
and then it
Yeah.
goes the same for Tom Hardy's character Tommy, where he was an internet sensation from
Yep.
for knocking out a very well established top ranked MMA fighter, and because
Which
just off
is
of that alone, he was invited to participate in this tournament, and they're like, it's a lucky thing that occurred. It's he's a war hero. I respect him. He ripped a tank, a door tank with his bare hands. You got to give him some props. Yeah, but the door tank don't hit back.
yeah.
So that believability thing helped out too.
And I think that in circa 2011, 2012, that would be exactly how we felt about it. Like, yeah, he was okay. He was on a video. He did it once. Big deal. I don't know why he got invited, but in 2021, that's way more believable. Like you could have done less than that if you have 5 million views and someone goes, hey, you want to you want to broadcast this real quick?
Yeah, it's like Logan Paul fighting Floyd Mayweather. Who would have thought 10 years ago that Floyd Mayweather would be fighting an internet, a YouTuber for that matter,
Or the YouTuber.
for millions of dollars in
Or
an
the
exhibition
YouTuber.
fight. Yeah, I
Right.
mean, like I when I first heard the rumblings, I was like, "There's no way it's going to happen. If he is going to do it, he's not going to do it for pennies." And then it actually happened. I was like,
Yep.
"Holy shit! We literally live in a different age now where this wouldn't have been a thing over 10 years ago. It just wouldn't,
Yeah.
because the landscape of media has changed so much where anyone can almost be famous for doing almost the most mundane things, and all of a sudden they've got a cloud over them that could carry elsewhere.
Yeah, the TikTok star Addison Rae, girl known for dancing and being an adorable white girl. Okay, not important, but she she has not displayed any kind of hosting skills, commentary, reporting skills. She's just known for TikTok for dancing. She was invited to be a broadcast journalist at the last UFC, and she literally posted something saying like, I've been cramming the last 3 weeks at journalist school, and here I am, UFC 230, whatever she was at. And everyone was like, so I've been spending hundreds of $1,000s for journalist school, and I won't ever have that kind of opportunity.
Well, I mean, one could argue too, but then again, this is one of those rare situations. Joe Rogan never had any of that background, sporting background, but he's gotten better with it.
But he was in at ground floor. He had martial arts background enough to go, okay, I have an idea of what's going on.
You're 100% right. Yeah.
And they go, hey, can you do it for free? And he goes, yeah, I guess just pay for my plane ride, my plane ticket. I'll be there. And he's been doing it for like, 20 something years now.
Yeah. Something like that. Yeah. And he's really one of the best who's ever done. And for a good reason too, because he knows his shit. He knows how to point out certain things that would probably be missed out by someone who doesn't really know the sport. I mean, we've heard that many times with other MMA events where we have these commentators who are clearly boxing commentators, and they're coming in to chime in and give and he's got him in it's called an arm bar, right? Wow, that's amazing. And look at it, you can see the guy's face, his reaction. Like, dude, I don't need a fucking, sports camera. I just need you to tell me, what's going on and what the move is, because I can't see it, and they don't know how to articulate that because they don't really know what's going on. They just know what they think they see, but they bring that one guy who's supposed to be like the balance of the two. And they still can't get it right because two guys are just chiming in, doing their job because they know better. At least they think they know better. But yeah, it's
in jiu-jitsu and MMA, like, I don't blame them. I don't fault them for it. It's just too much to know. Even now, I've been watching it for 10 years, and I roll and I have an idea of how things work. And even then, go like, as I'm listening to Joe, I'm like, I think he's gonna try to do something else, and then it ends up Joe being right. And you go, well,
yeah.
Good on him.
I mean, the sport's definitely evolved here, but I mean, we're kind of going off on a tangent with this, but it's but that's the thing though. With this movie, it certainly is for me, it could almost be like a timeless film. Yeah. I don't necessarily feel that way about the movie. It's a really enjoyable movie. There's a lot that I do love about the film, and it's just the characters that I connect with the most. The MMA stuff is like is fine. It's okay for me, but it's not the reason why I like the movie. I mean, I love the film because of the characters.
I agree.
Rocky, boxing film, but it's not really a boxing film. It's a character story, but that story feels timeless. Like you can watch that movie, anytime and you can show it to anybody, and I guarantee 9 times out of 10, someone will walk away like, holy shit, I feel like I can take over the world now. I didn't feel like that with this movie. And that's not to say they're shade film because of that.
I don't think you're supposed to. The guy that you liked, your favorite son lost. Like that's, you're not supposed to feel like you conquered the world. You're supposed to feel like something was resolved.
Yeah, and I think they're smart for doing that too. Let's not make a Rocky story. Let's just do a much more a different type of personal story for these two characters and go see their journey and then make amends. That's really the best thing that worked for the movie, in my opinion.
Because it doesn't matter who won. The fact is, like, they're not underdogs in our mind because that's irrelevant. We don't know any of the other fighters. We just know that this is the most important battle is going on right now. It has nothing to do with the fight. It just happened to be the vehicle that they showed up in.
Yeah, you got a point there about that. All right, so we have been chatting away about this movie. We certainly have got our opinions about it, which we mostly enjoyed, and we walked away with something that we connected with the story, and we definitely have shared our overall thoughts, which we kind of went off. We tried to end it with that, and we went off on a tangent. But
that's what you get when you hang out with me, bro.
Yeah, I know. That's why I asked you. I got to do this review with you because this is what I wanted. But that being said, though, we have shared our thoughts. So for anyone out there who's watching, let us know what you guys think of the movie, because there's so much about this movie that we loved. I loved a lot more that I didn't like about it. But the positives outweigh the negatives for me. So I always go back to this film and enjoy for the personal character journey that we see these people go through. So for anyone out there who's seen the movie, let me know what you guys think. Did you guys like the film? Did you guys hate it? Let me know in the comment section down below. And also make sure you follow us on our social media accounts. So Loy, where can they follow you?
Loy Lee Comedy across all your social media websites, LOYLEE Comedy. And that's where you can find me. What I do want to know, if you put it in the comments below, did you think that Joel's wife was a stripper or a waitress?
Oh, that's a good question.
I need to know if that's what you thought. Put it in the comments below.
We should create a poll. Was Joel's wife a stripper? Yes or no?
Well, I mean, if she's a stripper, she already has a poll.
Okay. All right. Well, you can follow me on my social media accounts. You can follow me on Instagram, Rob_Medina0585, Twitter, RobMedina0585, and on Facebook, simply just Rob Medina. And also for my show, which Loya was also a guest on, make sure you check out that episode too. It was a really good one. I hope you guys check it out. And also check out some of the other episodes I've done as well too. That will be coming up very, very soon. And you can follow the social media accounts for that on Instagram, You're So Cool with Rob Medina, and on Twitter, You're So Cool WRM. So until next time, everybody, you guys be safe out there. I thank you very much for joining us here. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and cheers.